Okay. Ready.
Good evening. We're going to be learning Be'ezus Hashem, the second Maimer in the series of the 4 Maimarim that the Rebbe gave us on Chof Sivan. It's printed in the Kovetz Chof Sivan. And the second Maimer was also said in Parshas Shlach, just like the Maimer we learned last time, Vayishlach Yeshua, which is an Haftarah of Parshas Shlach. Here's a Maimer on Parshas Shlach. Also to do with the Meraglim. And this part is about how Moshe is interceding and asking Hashem to forgive the Yidden. That means because the Chet HaMeraglim was a terrible sin, for which the Yidden had to stay in the Midbar another 40 years. So Moshe Rabbeinu is begging Hashem to please forgive the Yidden. So we have in Parshas Shlach, Pasuk Yud, Perek Yud Dalid, Pasuk Yud Zayin. There are 3 psukim there. And by the way, just to mention, like usual, that this shir and all the shiurim that we learn on this special program is Le'ilu Nishmas, L'schus, Le'ilu Nishmas, Miriam Bas, Rebbe Ephraim Za'ev, that she should have Yeridas HaNeshama Lamata B'Karev Mamish, Bias Mashiach Tzidkenu. Amen. So before we start the Maimer, an introduction. There are 3 psukim, Yud Zayin, Yud Ches, and Yud Tes. Yud Zayin, Moshe Rabbeinu is continuing. This is in the middle of his discussion with Hashem. And when he's saying to Hashem, V'ato Yigdal no koyach Adnai, that may the koyach Adnai be enlarged, Kasher dibarta, as you have spoken, Leimer saying. Moshe is asking that the Shem Adnai, as the Rebbe is going to explain, that's connected to where the sin of the Meraglim took place. He's asking Hashem to forgive them. And Moshe, the next pasuk, Moshe is quoting the Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim, Hashem Erech Hapayim, Rav Chesed, even though this pasuk does not have all the 13 Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim, but that, as we're going to see in the Maimer, the Rebbe brings from the Arizal that this pasuk is mentioning only 9 of them, but it's alluding to the Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim. So Moshe is mentioning Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim. Then comes the 3rd pasuk, where Moshe is saying his maskana, that because I want Yigdal koyach Adnai, and because I mentioned Hashem Kel Rachem V'Chanun, I'm asking you, therefore, comes the 3rd pasuk, Slach no la'avoin ha'am hazeh, k'goy l'chasecha. So please forgive them. So we have a sequence of 3 psukim. First one, Moshe is saying Yigdal. The second one is saying the Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim. And the 3rd one is saying that what he wants B'Poel, they should forgive them. Let's understand the meaning of this Yigdal no koyach Adnai. What does that have to do with the forgiveness of Yidden? And what does that have to do with Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim? And why Dafke, if he says this, you get Slach no lo avenu hazeh, you can bring about a slicha. So this is a Maimer the Rebbe said, and Chof Sivan, Mevarchim Chodesh Tammuz, Hey Tavshin Yud Tes. That's many years ago. Hey Tafshin Yutes, the Rebbe said the Smimer, but then the Rebbe was Magia the Smimer, and it was one of the 4 Maimonim that were included in the Kaivetz Chof Sivan. Yigdal no Koyachadnai. Moshe is asking that there should be a Hagdala, an enlargement of the Koyachadnai. We'll soon explain what that is. Kasher dibarta, like you have spoken, Lamer saying. When did Hashem speak? Kasher dibarta means that he's referring to a dibur of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kasher dibarta. Where did Hashem speak and say something which should cause Yigdal no koyach hatnai, which will bring about the forgiveness? Pirush Rashi, Mahu adibur. What is the dibur? Hashem erech hapayim. What's following in the next pasuk? Hashem erech hapayim. So Moshe Rabbeinu is saying, Kasher dibarta. Dus the Chalein gesagt. We remember Moshe Rabbeinu after the Chet HaEgel, so the Eibishter said, Hashem, Kel Rachem Chanun, and Moshe Rabbeinu asked, who's it for Tzadikim or Rishoyim? Hashem said, it's for all. For Rishoyim too. And Moshe said, what? Rishoyim? And Hashem said, yeah. One day you're gonna tap into this. You're gonna need it. So now Moshe Rabbeinu is saying, Hashem erech hapayim, etc. The Moshe is, so to speak, recalling and reminding, so to speak, Hashem that this is the based on Hashem erech hapayim, he should forgive the Yidden. And that's what Rashi is telling us, that kasher dibarta, like you have already spoken, Hashem erech hapayim. Now, why do we need Rashi to say so? Wouldn't it be just, if you learn the pasuk itself, Ata Yigdal no koyach hatnai, kasher dibarta leimer, and it says in the pasuk Hashem erech hapayim. Why does Rashi have to emphasize it? So the Rebbe explains, because if you learn the pasuk without Rashi, you might think a different pshat. Kasher dibarta means it's like a kid saying to the teacher, teacher, I came late, but you said that even if I come late, I can say I'm sorry. In other words, Moshe Rabbeinu, the mashma is loshen hakosav b'pashtusi. Without Rashi, you would think that kasher dibarta is not referring to the next pasuk, Hashem erech hapayim, but what is it referring to? Shadiba da HaKadosh Baruch Hu, kasher dibarta, hu yigdal koyach hatni. That's referring to the koyach hatni, that Hashem's words from before, that should cause yigdal koyach hatni, as we'll soon explain what it means. So the shaila is, what does kasher dibarta mean? Like, is it referring to Yigdal koyach hatnai, or is it going on to the following pasuk, Hashem erech hapayim d'yidgim mitzarachmi? That's why v'lochein hutzrach rash lefaresh shall be derech hapshat. Rashi has to say that pshuta shall mikra hapirush hu Hashem erech hapayim. When you say kasher dibarta, we're referring to something previously, but you're referring to the next pasuk, Hashem erech hapayim. So here we see the hava amina, how we look at the pasuk, that it's referring on before, on ata yigdal koyach hatnai, and that's what we're referring kasher dibarta. And Rashi saying, no, it's referring on what it says later. But, says the Rebbe, we're not negating that it also means the first pshat, the have mina pshat before Rashi. Avon mizeh sha'apasuk nema beloshen zeh. The fact that this pasuk was said in such a lashon, sha'mashma shaloihi, which what does it sound like? Shadibaru sheyigdal kayachadnai. It's referring to the words before Rashi says his pirush. So without Rashi, we would think it goes on the previous words. Kasher dibarta lashon avad, the words before. So Heyois, that the pasuk was written in such a way, mashma shekavanas hakasav hi gam le'inyan zeh, that the pasuk includes also this pirush. In other words, what the Rebbe is saying, that it refers to both. That this pasuk, when it says kasher dibarta, Rashi tells us dibarta is referring to what it says after Hashem erech hapayim, yudgum midas harachamim, and that's what Rashi is telling us. But the pashut pshat from pasuk before Rashi, it goes on Yigdal kayachadne. It goes on the words before. Where do we find there's such a thing, kasher dibarta, that Hashem said, and that there was a need to say ata Yigdal kayachadne? It's like Moshe Rabbeinu saying, like a kid would say to Rebbe, you remember you once told me kach v'kach? You told me so and so. Where do we see that? That it should go on before the pshat before Rashi. The Rebbe brings a medrash. A Gemara. It says in Gemara, Peites Amid Aleph, in Shabbos, when Moshe went up Lamarim, it says, what did he see? He saw how the Eibishter is tying crowns to the letters of the Torah. And then the Eibishter says to Moshe, what's going on with you? You don't say hello? You don't say Shalom Aleichem? Is there a war in your town? Is it like, there's no peace in your town? Why didn't you say Shalom? And Moshe Rabbeinu says, I don't think out of respect I should be greeting my teacher, initiating a Shalom to a teacher. I don't think it's respectful. The Gemara continues that the Eibishter said to him, Amalai, Hashem says to him, you should have said something. Amar Aglai HaKadosh Baruch Hu LaMoshe, Haya L'chala Zreini. You could have said something to help me. Loimar, Rashi says, what does it mean? What could Moshe say to help Hashem? You should have wished me atzlacha. Haya L'chala Zreini. How? Zakt Rashi, Loimar Titzlach Melachtecha. That your malacha that you're doing should bring success. Moshe heard this. Miyad Amaloi. So he responded and he said to Hashem, Ve'ata Yigdal Nakoyach Adnai Kasher Dibarta. He says, Moshe Rabbeinu says, Yigdal Nakoyach Adnai. You wanted me to say something. You wanted me to, a person like me, I can be moisif, add something. So I am doing so. And I'm saying, Yigdal Nakoyach Adnai Kasher Dibarta. Like you told me to, you said say something. So I'm saying something. By the way, Rashi tells us, what does it mean, miyad? Immediately. Rashi says, it means to say that another time when Moshe came up, he didn't wait for an invitation to say something, but immediately he said, Ba'ata yikna lo kayachatne, kasher dibarta. Hainu, what does that mean to say? The kasher dibarta of this pasuk. Koi alamira hayelachala zneni. that what does the words kasher dibarta in this pasuk mean? According to the first pshat, what Hashem said to Moshe, Hayilchol Azreini. What is the inyan lo Azreini? What does it mean lo Azreini? Can a person help Hashem? Sheyiyeh Ezer Haysafa B'Koach Shalamayla. And David said yes. And that tzivoy, the inyan of lo Azreini, is what Moshe said afterwards. Yigdal koyachatnai. In short, just to make it in short, there are two pshatim in this pasuk. One pshat is before Rashi says anything. That kasha dibarta refers on what Hashem told him earlier when he came up Lamaraim, and he said Hayilchol Azreini, and that's why Moshe said Ata Yigdal no koyachadnai. Rashi says kasha dibarta refers to the next pasuk, Hashem kel erech hapayim. And the Rebbe is going to explain both pshatim, and the Rebbe says that both pshatim are really included in this pasuk. One does not negate the other. They're not mutually exclusive. Now the Rebbe is going to give us a third pshat in the pasuk. V'yesh lahaysev, the mashmos lashon hakasav, kasher dibarta leimer hu. What does the pasuk mean to say when it says kasher dibarta leimer? What kind of leimer? Leimer means to say something. Shadiba da Kadosh Baruch Hu leimer, that the Eibishter's dibur kasher dibarta is leimer zogepes. Shemoshe yoimar, that Moshe should say something. Ukamuvan gami maimer azal anal, like understood from the previous maimer azal mentioned from the Gemara. The kasher dibarta koi. What is kasher dibarta refer to? Al masha amar hakadosh baruch hu leMoshe hayilchol azreini. We brought from the Gemara that David said to Moshe, Zagapis, Vinshepisan, wish me good luck. She Moshe Yoimar, Moshe zol zagin, titzlach malachtecha. So Leimor, there's a third meaning in this part, third diuk. What is Leimor referring to what the Gemara is talking about? So basically we have three pshatim, or three approaches to this pasuk. Number one, it's referring kasher dibarta, when Hashem told him you should have said something, and he said, Ata Yigdal no koyachadni. Second pshat is, like Rashi says, refers to Hashem kel rachum. Yudgul means rachmim. And the third pshat is that that's what leimer means. Kasher dibarta, like you have spoken, leimer, that I should say something. If you take a look in number 6 on the bottom, in the Ha'aris, the Rebbe brings from the Marsha, what is kasher dibarta li leimer she'oymar ani as ich soll sagen. You have the Madam Kaimis here, the Ha'aris. I don't see it on the screen. Number 6. The Mashal says, Kasher dibarta li leimer. What does that mean, leimer? She'omer ani ich soll sagen. That I should say something. So those are the three pshatim. Now the Rebbe is going to sum all three together, and he's going to say something very important here. There's a famous thing that's known that when you have more than one pshat on a pasuk, they're not mutually exclusive. They help each other. And not only that, they're shayachim zelazeh. Move on. The gimel pirushim eila b'kasher dibarta. It's understood that these three pirushim in the words kasha dibarta, that what? Sheka'i al Yigdal kayachatni. One pshat that it goes in the words Yigdal kayachatni. Another pshat al Leimer. It refers to when they said to Moshe Zog. And the Rashi's pshat Hashem erech apayim. These three pshatim shayachim zelo zeh. They are all connected. V'tzarich lahavin dafim fashtein hashaychas the gimel pirushim eile. Let's try to figure out the connection of all three pshatim. The Rebbe brings the number 7. If you look down on the Ha'ara, number 7, the Rebbe brings, when he says that when there are 3 pshatim in one pasuk, they must be connected. How do you know that? The Rebbe says, "Ba'ad v'negeya l'psak din b'maisa b'poil." That when you have pirushim in one pasuk, they're connected, and you see b'negeya l'alacha ki yudua haraya lazeh mishatnez. The Gemara says in Nida b'negeya shatnez, that when is it considered shatnez? Has to be shoya, tave, and noise. 3 words, and which refers to the way the shatnez were put together. If it's shoya, tave, and noise, that's shatnez. And they all fit into one word, shatnez. In other words, to say that when you have 3 things together, they must be connected. So B'Kitzer, talking about a pasuk, Moshe Rabbeinu saying, "Takadosh Baruch Hu, Yigdal no kayachadnei." What does Moshe Rabbeinu want by the words Yigdal no kayachadnei? Now, the words kayachadnei is what's very important here. What's Adnai? It's one of Hashem's names. We know the Shemesh Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu are referring to different spheros. Even they're all the names of HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, but they're referring to the way Hashem is mizgala through different midos. Adnai, like the Rebbe is going to say later in the Maimer, is, like you say, Adon Olam. Has to do with Malchus, Welt. Adnai is Tzvidas HaMalchus. And Moshe has a bakasha that Yigdal no koyach Adnai. There should be a Hagdala in Tzvidas HaMalchus. How? That's what we're going to see now. B'Yishloim and the Kodesh HaBiyur Bozeh, the bakasha is Moshe, and followed by Hashem erech apayim goimer. He, why is Moshe Rabbeinu asking for Yigdal Koyach and saying Yud Gimel Midas Harachmim? Because Moshe wants Tachlis. What's Tachlis? What it says in the 3rd pasuk: Slach na laveinu hamazech goimer. Mechila, Slicha, Vikapara, Al Chet HaMeraglim. Basically, Moshe wants Hashem to forgive them for Chet HaMeraglim. Now, when you want a Bakasha Slicha, you have to know what address you're talking about. You have to know who you're speaking to. Vu Mishteit and Favem Mishteit. Moshe Rabbeinu knew that the sin, Bachlal, where do sins take place? Sins take place in Olam Hazeh HaGashmi. In Ishtalshel HaOlamis, where does any sin take place? It takes place in Seder Ishtalshelis. And where? In Malchus. Malchus has to do with Malchus Kaloilamim. Here is where a chet, upigam, a blemish that's caused through a sin, it's dafka here in Olam Hazeh. And that's why dafka over here in Olam Hazeh is where a person needs the kapara. In other words, if the person made the sin in Brooklyn, he has to get the kapara in Brooklyn. You can't go to Philadelphia to get the kapara, because here is where the pigam took place. L'mayla min hashtalshlus, there's no pigam. There's no such thing. In l'mayla min hashtalshlus, that's lifnei Hashem tetaru. Over there, everything is good and fine. Avedis do not reach so high. Over there, a pigam does not affect. There's no pigam l'mayla. And the same thing by a person. In his koiches, hanefesh, lamata, in his guf, that's where a pigam can take place. But in etzem hanefesh, hoisavam la'itoi, chida liyachtach, not shaykh in etzem hanefesh, in yishal pigam. So where does the person have to get the slicha? It should come dafke here lamata. But the problem is, if a person is stuck, he's in chains, he needs a new koyach elyon to free him. So what does he have to do? He has to reach into l'mayla miseda hashtalshlus, to a higher level. And when you reach to the higher level where the pigam did not take place, you could be manshach and oir to fill up that pigam, to fill up that place that was damaged. But it has to come from hecher. It has to come from a higher level. So basically we have two things when it comes to a slicha, to forgiveness. Number one is the makom hapigam. Number two, where can we achieve the pigam? You have to go to where you didn't sin. But that's l'mayla min hashtalshlus. I'll give a mashal. A guy ran into the store and his car was double parked. He runs into the store to get something very important. He comes out and the policeman is there, giving him a ticket. Says to the policeman, you don't understand, I was there for 10 seconds, mamish. And I have kids in the house. I couldn't stay long. It was emergency. What does the policeman say? He says, listen, I have my rules that if I see someone double parked, I have to give a ticket. I have to take this ticket. You have a taina? You have an excuse? And it might be a very good excuse. I don't have the jurisdiction. I don't have the power to take off this ticket. As far as I'm concerned, you violated. But how about going to the judge? Going to a higher level, and over there you'll be able to achieve a pardon. Mitzad olam hazeh agashmi, person sinned, he sinned. In order to be able to achieve the slicha, you have to go to a higher source in a place where the sin is not really counted. That's why it's forgivable. Let's look inside. When it comes to forgiveness, there are two things that are needed here. The shoylish haslicha, the source of the slicha is from a place which is higher than ishtalshlus. Why? In order to fill up that blemish that was caused by the sin, there you have to draw down a light from a much higher place, pigam, a place that's higher than pigam. And that's l'mayla min hashtalshlus. Over there, im chatasim atifol boy, b'rabba peshechem ataseloi. It's a place where Choshech and Oir, Esav and Yaakov, There's no pagam over there. That's why Yom Kippur says Lifnei Hashem Titaru. Hashem Yud Kei Vav Kei is Yud Kei Vav Kei is Seder Shtalshlus. Yud is Chachma, Hey is Bina, Vav is Vav Midas, and Hey Achreina is Malchus. That's Seder Shtalshlus. If you want to achieve forgiveness, you have to go Lifnei Hashem. That's where it becomes Titaru. But that's not enough. If you reach all the way up there and you don't bring it down here, you have to bring that light down. In order to bring about the mili apagam, fill up that damage, that blemish. Lemata be'hamakom sheboi haya hapigam. You have to bring it down to the place where the pagam took place. Now we can understand what Rashi is telling us. Rashi says, in order to achieve this, you have to reach out to Yud Gimel Midos Harachmim, which are Lamaylam is Seder Ishtalshlus. Because Dafka over there, Pigam does not take place. And from there, you could be Mamshechet Lamata. The Shoy, the Shaslicha, he mebechinas, Hashem, Erechapayim, Goimer, Yud Gimel Midos Harachmim, Shalamaylam Ishtalshlus. Where is Yud Gimel Mitzarachmim? Higher than say the Shtalshlus. That's why we can always achieve forgiveness through the Yud Gimel Mitzarachmim. And that's what Moshe Rabbeinu is saying. Yigdal no koyach adnai, but I know that's not enough just to fix adnai, which is the level of Masfiras Amalkos where the damage took place. I'm asking Hashem Erechapayim. I'm asking give us the light from that high madrega of Yud Gimel Midas Rachmim. And once I get from Shalamaylam Seder Ishtalshalus, by the way, take a look at number 10. Take a look at number 10. What does it say about number 10? The Rebbe brings Yud Gimel Midas Rachmim. And the Rebbe tells you, if you count in Pasuk, you see only 9 of the 13 are mentioned in this Pasuk Yud Ches. U're'ei l'kutei Torah lo Arizal ala Pasuk, Hatam al zeh shebepasuk zeh nemru rak tes midos. You want to have the reason why it says in this Pasuk only 9 of the 13 midos rachmim. Go over the L'kutei Torah from the Arizal and you'll find it. So, but once Moshe Rabbeinu was asking Hashem Erechapayim, give me the light from the Yud Gimel Midas Rachmim. But what does Moshe Rabbeinu say? This should all come down. Yigdal koyach adnai. What does that mean? Ushetiyah hamshacha lamata be'adnai. What does Yigdal koyach adnai mean? Should be a hagdala, a hisafa in Adnai, which is Malchus. Why does it have to come down to Adnai? Because in order to fix this pigam that took place, the only way that can happen is through bringing down from Lamayla Meseder Ishtalshlus to fix the pigam. I just want to add another vart. When we say that it has to come from a place that's higher than Ishtalshlus, where pigam does not affect, I want to bring something that the Rebbe brings from Kutei Torah. Why is it by Chet HaEgel it says the Eibishter said to Moshe, "V'samticha b'nikras hatzur." What is tzur? Tzur is a big rock. But what kind of rock is it? There are many different. There's a sela, there's a tzur. A tzur is a rock that can give fire. If you rub the rock properly, the way you should, you can get fire out of it. Says the Alter Rebbe like this. Regular fire, if you ever want to make a fire burn, you have two conditions. Number one, you need an air. You need a piece of wood. Something should have an achiza, has to hold on to something. That's rule number one. So you need something, a receptacle to hold on to the fire. Either a wood, a candle. The second condition is make sure you don't have water that's extinguishing it. Then the fire will burn. Masha Ein Kain, the fire that's in this rock, doesn't need any of these conditions. You can have a rock, a tzur, that gives out fire. It could sit in water for decades and take it out, rub it, and you'll get a fire. How come the fire was not extinguished? Because the fire over there is behelim. It's so behelim that nothing can extinguish it. Nothing can make it be extinguished. Will always be there. You just have to rub it to get it out. It says the Alter Rebbe like this. The Eibishter is Eish Eichlahu. And the Eibishter is looking to hold on to us. Through what? Two conditions. Condition number one, Ner Mitzvah B'Torah Eira. We should act like a candle, which gives the achiza, that the Eish Eichlah HaKadosh Baruch Hu should hold on to us. That's through Kiyum HaMitzvahs. Asay Toiv. The second condition, not to do any Avedas. Because that is like water that extinguishes that flame, the Eish Eichlah. So we have to do mitzvahs, Asay Toiv. We have to be careful of Sur Meirah. But Bamed Dvarim Amurim, when can the Eish Eichlah HaKadosh Baruch Hu be affected by Ma'aseh Tachtainim is only in the Seder Shtalshalus. But if you're talking L'mayla Seder Shtalshalus, over there it's not Shaykh. Because in Etzem HaNefesh, there's no pigam. It's higher. It's like the fire in Tzura Chalamish. And saying L'mayla Seder Shtalshalus, Ma'aseh Tachtainim does not harm. It can't cause a pigam. That's why we need, in order to achieve a slicha and a kapara, we have to achieve from l'mayla meseder shtalshlus. We have to reach into our own etzem hanefesh and bring a light down into the makom hapagam. And where's the makom hapagam? On the level of malchus that has to do with olamais. The other sfirais before malchus they have their own thing. Malchus chal kaloilamim. What has to do with Welt? Malchus. That's why we have to bring it down to Malchus. And that's what the Rebbe is continuing. The Shem Adnai hu b'Malchus. Shem Adnai is in Malchus. Why do we say Adnai? From the word Adon Olam. Olam, when you're talking about Welt. The other shemas have to do with other levels. V'hapagam dechet hameraglim shleirotzu b'mitzvahs ma'asiyos hu b'malchus. What was the pagam of the meraglim? What was their chet? Any aveda that a person does, anyone affects malchus. Befrat what the Meraglim were doing. What was the Meraglim? Their whole kavana was shaloirotzu b'mitzvahs ma'asiyos. Where do we do mitzvahs ma'asiyos? Dafke in Olam Hazeh. What Meraglim had such a good time in the Midbar. They didn't have to plow. They didn't have to plant. They didn't have to sow. They had everything they needed that they can live a spiritual life. Even the food they ate was min hashamayim. It was gashmistic, but it was a ruchnistic food. The clothing, they didn't have to take care of it. The Ananei HaKaved, Megatzin, they used to press the clothing. And drinking, Be'er Shal Miriam. And they wanted to live a life in a place where they can have Hizbanunus and Hizbaidadus, they can have meditation, and they can be separated from the world. They didn't want to go in and start dealing with mitzvahs ma'asiyos. So their sin was affecting where mitzvahs ma'asiyos is supposed to affect this world. Dira b'tachtonim, to elevate this world to the ma'asim tovim. And they went against it. That's why their sin was pagan in Shem Adnai, in Malchus. Bal Yedei Hagdala the Koyach Adnai Nisken v'nismal apigam. Now, if I bring a new light into Koyach Adnai, into Malchus, where am I getting the light from? From Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim. That's going to fix and fill up the pegam, the damage that was done. So B'Kitzer, what we just learned was that we're talking about what did Moshe Rabbeinu want. What was his bakasha? He wanted slicha, mechila, kapara for the Yidden. And he knew the only way to achieve it, you need to give me the serachmin. You need something which is l'mayla meseder ishtalshlus. Because in order to achieve mechila, slicha, and kapara, you need two things. You have to achieve up in Shemayim, higher than ishtalshlus, where the pegam did not harm anything. And you have to bring it down here lamata. In other words, here lamata, when a person does an aveda, it's like he burnt his bridges. He did the damage. So who are you going to talk to? Gezindigt is gezindigt. But if you bring from a place higher than that, Yidgimel Midas Harachmim, where your pegam, the person's pegam does not affect at all, then he could bring down a light. He can get that light, and bring it down to the Mokaim Hapigam, down to here, to Malchus, to Shem Adnai. And that's what was called, that's why Moshe Rabbeinu said, Va'ata Yigdal no koyach Adnai. We would like to have a Hagdala in koyach Adnai. How? Hashem Kel Rachem. Through bringing Yud Gimel Midas Rachmim in. I'd like to add another word. Gewaldige word. If we take a look, Moshe Rabbeinu came up Bahar, and we brought the Gemara where the Eibishter says, Hoya l'cha lo'azreini. You should have said, have good luck. Eibishter needs Moshe Rabbeinu to wish Hashem good luck. Shenev hatzlacha, titzlach b'melachtecha. And the answer is yes. The Eibishter Kavayachol gives us a chance to bench him. And every day, when we say a bracha to the Eibishter, Baruch Atah Hashem, you're talking directly to Hashem. You're benching him. Like I already mentioned the story, that was a young bacher from England who came to Yechidus to the Rebbe. He was before Bar Mitzvah or around Bar Mitzvah age. And what the Rebbe asked him what he's learning, And one of the things he said, he's learning L'kutei Torah about Melach Basada, was Chedesh Elul. And the Rebbe said, if the king is in the field, have you got to meet him? Did you get to meet him? And he didn't know what to answer. So the Rebbe says, when you say Baruch Atah Hashem, you're talking directly to him. You're facing the king panim el panim. Now, what does Eibishter need us to bench him? There's a lot of biurim. It's about us realizing that we owe something to Hashem. We have to thank Hashem, ask permission. But the Eibishter himself said to Moshe, the Eibishter wants to hear a Yid benching HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and for sure benching each other. We have no idea how powerful our words are. The Eibishter says, I will bench anyone who benches you. And the Rebbe by Fabrengen once said, the Rebbe says, I have a gimmick for you guys. You want to get a nice bracha from Hashem? Write a letter to your friend and write over the brachas to him. Whatever you want to write. And you know what's going to happen? The Eibishter is going to bench you. So when you go in the street and you wish someone to have a good day, it comes back to you. I'll tell you a mice that happened with me, personally. I was once on my way. I had to take care of some important papers in one of the government offices downtown Brooklyn. And the time to get there didn't fit with the time I finished in yeshiva. In yeshiva, I finished like around 4 o'clock, 4:30. I didn't have enough time to get there. They closed 5 o'clock, whatever. So one time I rushed, got onto the train, and I'm rushing to that office. And on the train, I meet a friend of mine. And as I'm going off the train, I wish him a bracha. I say to him, Atzlacha, Rabba, Umeflaga, Lamaila, Miderech, Hateva, Legamri. I remember those are the words I said, because I heard the Rebbe saying it by Fabrengen once. And I left. I come to the office. The building is a big building, and there's a row of people like Mimitzrayim Adhena, maybe 100 people waiting online to get in. I come to the line. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to wait for everyone. I'm surely never going to get in by 5 o'clock. What am I to do? But this I saw from the distance. I start walking closer to the building, and suddenly the door opens. A lady walks out and sees me, and she calls me over, and she said, what did you come for? Come in. And I showed her the papers. She took my papers, took care of it in a few minutes, and I was out. Zero explanation how that happened. So many people waiting online to get in, and I came, and ain't svei. What happened was Hatzlacha, Lamaila, Miderech, Hateva, Legamri. When you wish a Yid a bracha, it comes right back to you. And when you bench the Eibishter, what does the Baal Shem Tov say? V'at HaKodesh, Yoshev Tehilas Yisrael, that the Eibishter is sitting and waiting for Tehilas Yisrael. And in the schus that we bench Hashem, when someone says, how you doing today? You say, Baruch Hashem, fine. How's the mishpacha? Baruch Hashem, good. You say Baruch Hashem, you're bringing upon yourself more and more brachas. So B'kitzer, we just got up to Ois Gimel. Let's do a little bit of Ois Gimel, as much as time will permit. The pasuk does not say Ba'ata Yigdal no Adnai. We're talking about Shem Adnai, referring to Malchus, should have a Hagdala, then the pasuk should say Ba'ata Yigdal no Adnai. What's Koyach Adnai? That's the Rebbe is going to bring two pirushim. One pirush is that Adnai is going to become bigger. The Yigdal goes on Adnai, and it's going to become bigger through its koyach. There's a certain koyach, which means the shayrish of Malchus. Instead of saying the words koyach Adnai, koyach is the shayrish, Adnai is Malchus. Malchus has a shayrish, which later we're going to say in the next ois, that is Chachma, Nois Gimel. It's going to tell you it's Chachma. So the shayrish of Adnai is Chachma, and we're saying Yigdal na koyach Adnai, that Adnai should get a Hagdala to be increased through what? Through the koyach of Adnai, through Chachma. That's one pshat. Another pshat is, no, that koyach Adnai should be enlarged. We're not referring only to Adnai. We want a Hagdala in koyach. What is the pshat in the pasuk? It says Yigdal, Ba'ata Yigdal na koyach Adnai. The koyach from Adnai should be enlarged. It doesn't say Adnai should be. And that's why there's another pirush on this pasuk that Yigdal na koyach Adnai, that we want to bring a Tosfos Oyer into the koyach of Adnai, into Chachma, and then it will reach Adnai. So these are two pirushim on the words Yigdal no koyach Adnai. One pirush is koyach is the shayrish of Adnai. It should give a light, an extra Tosfos Oyer into Adnai. Another pshat is that koyach Adnai itself gets a new light. In other words, like there are three things here. There's Adnai, then there's koyach Adnai, and then there is from where koyach Adnai is going to get a special oil. Let's look inside. What does the pasuk say? It doesn't say just that Adnai should get bigger. It says koyach Adnai. Tishnei pirushim bazeh. There are two pirushim. The Rebbe first brings Melekutei Torah, one pirush. The Bekama Derushim Mevuad, it's explained. The pirush Yigdal koyach Adnai. What does Yigdal koyach Adnai mean? Sheyumshach ba'adnai hakoyach shaloi. That into Adnai should come its koyach. What does that mean? Hasherish u'makir de Adnai. The sherish and makir of Adnai should come into Adnai. So your koyach Adnai is coming from the level of koyach into Adnai. Ba'ayidizeh tiyeh hagdala shaloi. That's going to cause a Hagdala, a Tosfos Oyer in Adnai. So in other words, that's the first pshat. Yigdal no koyach Adnai, the koyach should go into Adnai. But that's not the pshat of the pasuk. Pasuk says Yigdal no koyach Adnai. That means the koyach of Adnai needs to get a Hagdala. V'apirish the Yigdal koyach Adnai b'pashtus hu v'chein mavur b'kamed rushim. And other Maimarim, the Rebbe brings from Eira Torah, Shatia Hagdala gam b'koyach Adnai. Not only Adnai should get an increase, but also koyach Adnai needs an increase. And how is that accomplished? That is accomplished to getting an oir which is Lamaila Miseder Ishtalshalos. An oir which is higher than Seder Ishtalshalos, that's Yud Gimel Midai Sarachmin, and that comes down, an oir from there comes down into Koyach, and from Koyach it goes down to Adnai. So that's the second pshat. Ba'ata Yigdal no Koyach Adnai. But the shaila is, that's what the Rebbe is going to explain after. The pasuk says, Yigdal no Koyach Adnai. It seems that the second pshat makes more sense. For the first pshat, it says, Yigdal no Koyach Adnai. It doesn't say Yimshach, Koyach be'adnai. It says Yigdal no Koyach Adnai. But the Alter Rebbe in Likutei Torah says that what does Yigdal no Koyach Adnai mean? That Koyach should come into Adnai. And that's enough. But what's with Koyach itself? He doesn't say that there. Later, that he's going to say also it needs from Yud Gimel Sarach. I'm not going to go into that right now. But the first pshat from Likutei Torah is the Hagdalah should be in Adnai. Koyach, the Sheirosh Shemakar of Adnai, should be mashpia into Adnai. But the second pshat is, which l'chayre makes more sense, is that Yigdal no Koyach, that from Yud Gimel Midas Harachmim should come down into Koyach, which will bring a Hagdalah into Koyach, and that will, as a chain reaction, bring down to Adnai, and that will bring the Mechila, Slicha, and Kapara. Mitzvah next week, Blineder, we shall continue. Now I want to wish everyone a Guten Shabbos, and don't forget to give tzedakah, because the Rebbe says it's always good to connect every shir of Torah with tzedakah. And I do want to mention that this Shabbos is a very meaningful Shabbos for me in particular. Chof Vav Iyar. Chof Vav is Shem Havaya. What happened Chof Vav Iyar? One of the Igris Kodesh that was opened in the time when I was in the hospital and I was not well, was over there a letter from Chof Hey Iyar, and the Rebbe talks about Shavuos, coming to Shavuos, Gesundheit, and Taka Chof Hey Iyar. We got the good news that tomorrow, Miyetz Hashem Chavav, that I can go home from the hospital. So for me, it was a very, very special day, which I again thank. I thank number one HaKadosh Baruch Hu for the Nisim and Iflais. I thank everyone for davening for me. And in this chus, I'm espalo ba'at chaveiroi, nena tchila, that the Eibishter should bench every one of you, each and every one of Klal Yisrael, whatever they need, beginning with the Refuah Shalema, for those who need the Refuah Shalema, take of me ad mamash, and all brachas, hashpois, toiv, hanira, v'hanigla, lematam, hasarat tvachim. And we should be able to be zoicha, that even before Shabbos and Varchim Chedesh Sivan, we should see the Einei Basar, how everything that happened in the time of Galus, like we finish in the Perek Chamishi of Pirkei Avos, Lafum Tzaira Agra, that we should see the Agra, and the Rebbe said we have enough tzar already. It's time to see the Agra, the reward that the Eibishter has for us. And the best reward is Mashiach Tzidkenu to be Nizgala, Tekef Umiyad Mamash